the line. Hello.
Hello.
Coach Pasamas Jao, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Omar, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm not sure. Did you call via video or is just a voice call?
I'm
Oh,
seeing
I can
myself. I
see.
think it's video.
Oh, I can see you now. Thank you so much for your
Yes.
time, Coach.
Thank you. Anytime, bro.
You had an interview with Hot FM on the political show, and it
Yes.
was also printed on the Standard newspaper saying Duga spokesman accused Barrow of sacrificing coalition agenda. Um, to start with, can you put this thing into context? Meaning, what do you mean by sacrificing the coalition agenda?
Well, I think the first correction that needs to be made is that I am not the
That's
spokesperson of Duga. The
yes,
spokesperson of Duga is Yasofi Sise.
yeah,
I am the vice chair of Duga.
vice chair. Okay,
And uh, the whole interview centered around the president's Meet the People store.
yeah,
And I had argued that looking at the president and how he was going about the Meet the People's Tour, which is a constitutionally mandated tour,
yeah,
to talk to the vote to the Gambian people, understand their concerns, and then at least tell them remedies to their concerns. We saw a president who turned it into the coming out party of the Barrow Youth Movement for Development, or whatever he calls it.
yeah.
So I believe that I'm 100% convinced that the president, Mr. Barrow, is really going away from the agenda that brought him to power. And that is the corrective agenda to run a transition government and then step away and allow somebody else to be elected in a free and fair elections. And what he has done, in essence, from my own point of view, is that he substituted the agenda with his personal agenda of how to stay in power longer than the period that he had agreed with his colleagues.
Again, this is the president who has been leveled. Some said he's clueless. I think I have a problem with. Can you? I think the cameraman, the technical crew will call you again, Coach. Uh, just a moment. That is Coach Pasamajau. He had an interview with the Hot FM political show, and it was printed on the Standard newspaper yesterday. And I called him to shed light or clarify on some of the points he made during that interview. According to Coach, said that he has said that President Barrow has substituted the coalition agenda with his personal agenda to further remain in power as long as,
Hello?
yes, well, okay, I think the line is clear now. Okay,
All right.
to continue with, I said Barrow has been somebody who has been leveled. Some said he's an accidental president. Some said he's clueless. He has been given all kinds of names. So how can a man of that nature sacrifice an agenda put forward by several political leaders?
Well, people have the right to interpret the president anyhow they want. But from my own perspective, what I see is a guy who has become very savvy in his dealings. And you look at how the people that he has surrounded himself with. This is a guy, when he came, Usainu used to be the godfather. Now, those that are around him are the Sidi Jais and others. We've seen him now take very powerful positions in his government and hand it to people who, like the Minister of Finance and the Minister of External Affairs. These are one of the most senior positions in this government, and he's decided to give it to people who had, ties with Jammeh or the APRC. So to me, I'm not talking about cluelessness. I'm talking about somebody who is really now, I think, very interested in finding ways of staying in power for as long as practically possible.
So as far as you are concerned, those who have ties with Jammeh should not be in those kind of positions.
No, well, especially those, Omar, that are subjected to the commission. Let's look at the Minister of Finance, for example.
Right.
He's one of those who are demanded by the commission to declare their assets. So the commission would not just, you cannot establish a commission whose objective it is to find faults from the former regime. They ask you to declare your assets. Omar, you are here. Nobody is asking you to declare your assets because nobody thought that you've done anything. Other people had gone through the commission. They've not been asked to declare their assets. The reason why the commission found it necessary to ask Mr. Jai to declare his assets is because of they believe that maybe he was so close to Jammeh that chances are he must have gotten money or wealth through suspicious ways. So to have that guy now man the Ministry of Finance, to me is a slap, not only to the victims of Jammeh, but the whole concept of even establishing a commission of inquiry in the first place. What would have thought would have been a good practice would have to make sure that you wait for the commission report to come out. If people are cleared from not committing any crimes, then you can definitely rightfully appoint those people, but you cannot appoint people whose names are being bandied around in the commissions of inquiries.
Okay. Another thing is, like you said, Barrow sacrificing, but others said it is not Barrow. It is all of them, nearly all of them, because the fact that they split it up during the parliamentary election shows that there was no coalition in place. It's just a mere pronunciation, people saying coalition, but there is no coalition in place. And looking at what happened recently.
Well, of course, the coalition has its problems too. But again, we almost remember that the reason why Barrow went to the IEC and presented a coalition manifesto that clearly stipulated that if they were to win, they would serve for 3 years as an interim government, organize elections and go their way, and that the presidential candidate, the flag bearer Barrow, would not participate in the subsequent elections, and that he would participate as an independent candidate. So that is clearly a coalition. Whether the coalition is fractured or not, Barrow was brought to power through a coalition. It was not by any single political party. It was brought to power by the collective coalition of political parties and civil society. So irrespective of what happens in the coalition, we still have a coalition government because it was through a coalition that Barrow became a president. So he is at least a coalition president.
You talked about the mosque, the smart street lights, and describing them as white elephant because you said it is not going to benefit farmers in any way. Or is it that whatever does not benefit farmers or poor people should not be in place? Are you talking about, that's what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think whoever wrote that article, I don't like criticizing the press. I don't think did great service to the interview.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking maybe she or he got tired during the transcribing the interview and decided to just do whatever. But the argument that I was making here was that to me the Meet the People store did not achieve its goal, because the goal of the tour would have been one of hope to the Gambian people, but it ended up being relegated and substituted by an argument about 60 mosques that have been built here and there, just to paraphrase, because I don't remember everything I said.
Right.
But what I was saying too is that in spite of our poverty, for 53 years, the Gambian people remain live in abject poverty, especially most of these farmers who work so hard, but you still cannot realize gains from their hard work. That going to these Meet the People store and turning into a fanfare thing with the drumming and dancing and all these promises that may not be immediately beneficial to the farmers, who are now more worried about their crops, who are more worried about their seeds, who are more worried about fertilizers, who are more worried about the markets that they would sell their seeds if they were to their crops if they were to harvest it, because building 60 mosques is not benefiting those people. Talking about Wi-Fi, internet Wi-Fi or whatever, it's not going to benefit those people in their needs, because the majority of the people's concern had nothing to do with lack of Wi-Fi. Their concerns are good hospitals. Their concerns are good roads. Their concerns are fertilizers. Their concerns are seeds. Their concerns are markets. Their concerns are other issues, electricity and all these things. These are the concerns of the Gambian people, not Wi-Fi and all these things. So that's what I was saying in essence, that at the end of the day, the biggest loser in this would be the poor farmer and the poor Gambians who would continue to live in abject poverty because they have been promised white elephant projects instead of things that would alleviate their problems.
We have been hearing this all the time. People, Barrow is surrounded by people who are not competent. Barrow is good, but those who are surrounding him are the bad people. And you also mentioned, it was also stated in your interview that people Barrow has around him have no political capital and credibility. Who are these people?
Well, I'll name one name, Sidi Jai.
But they are quite...
The man has no political capital, no credibility, and I think that is the biggest insult to whenever I see Sidi Jai at the airport,
yes,
bidding Barrow farewell or welcoming him back, I get angry. And my anger is as a result of this man who was the face of Jammeh's defiance that saw a lot of Gambians. Omar, you are a journalist. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Thousands of Gambians, in their tens of thousands, packing their things, running away from our country, thinking that there would be war. During all this time, there was one person who was Jammeh's face, talking to the people, talking to the international community. It was Sidi Jai. And he was adamant that Jammeh was not going to move an inch.
Yes.
Now, to have this guy within less than 2 years of Barrow's presidency, to have this guy so close to Barrow and the State House, I believe it's a terrible slap in the face of the Gambian people.
But like the saying goes, there is no permanent friend or permanent enemy in politics, but there is permanent interest. You talked about Sidi Jai, but we have seen similar situation in Ivory Coast. During the political crisis, you may remember the former President Laurent Gbagbo's brother-in-law, Charles Blé Goudé, had similar thing and said Laurent Gbagbo is not going anywhere when he lost election. Musa Ibrahim, during the Arab Spring in Libya, he stood by Gaddafi until the day he was killed. So, but we have, just yesterday we have seen President Lassana Ouattara forgiving the wife of former President Laurent Gbagbo, Simone Gbagbo. Don't you think a similar thing happened in this country? Although a lot happened that left a bad taste in many mouths, but they say let's put that at the back behind and we move on.
Well, they are different. They are completely different. Because if you look at our situation now, Omar, we have a commission of inquiry looking into Jammeh's finances. We have another commission, the TRRC,
right,
that is will be looking at the atrocities that have been committed under Jammeh. And so, to me, at least give that a chance to be exhausted first before you start forgiving people or allowing people within your circles. And I also do not believe in this notion of, oh, this man is good, the people that surrounded him. I believe that is a cop-out. Because at the end of the day, Barrow, I believe, is mature enough as a human being. He's a guy with 2 wives.
Right.
He has kids. So he should be able to have the judgment to determine who comes around him and who doesn't. If Barrow does not want you around him, you're not going around him.
No.
There are so many Gambians who maybe wanted to see him. He was not interested in seeing them. You know, we saw what they did. When the Ditari went to the Gambia, what did they tell them? They were telling them, oh, for you guys to meet the president, you have to write a letter to revoke, to denounce coup d'etat and all these things. He didn't want to see them because to them, they were not important to him. So he had conditions for them, that is, if they were to meet him. But for Sidi Jai, who was Jammeh's henchman during this whole process, when Gambia was really at its worst period, you know, and all these other people that were very close to Jammeh, today they are the ones hobnobbing with Barrow. So to me, that is the thing. Barrow, I believe, Omar, must understand that his government is not a normal one, in a way, in that it came as a result of a lot of hardship of Gambians, whether the killing of Gambians, whether the torturing of Gambians, whether the exiling of Gambians, and everything that came with it. So Gambian people are still hurt. Gambian people are still trying to overcome. So the last thing that you should do within 2 years of your ascension to the presidency, to act like you do not even remember anything that happened. Listen, Femi Peters died not too long ago, and we all know that Femi Peters' death, if there was a proper investigation done, could directly be linked to his incarceration. Solo Sentence death, Solo Koroma, and all those people who had died as a result of being incarcerated in jail. And there are many others who are still sick. When I went to the victim center and saw this guy who came and handed me a note telling me that he was part of Jammeh's AIDS program, that his wife died from it. He has full-blown AIDS in his body. He is a victim. So the last thing they need is for this government to act like nothing had happened. Let's just start and have these people who were praising Jammeh and doing all this around us. Because to me, it's like, different faces, but the same situation. So what I would urge President Barrow to do, I'm not asking you to go and put anybody in jail. That is not your job. But give the commissions the chance to be exhausted and see where the chips may fall. Now, if somebody is convicted and you feel that, because you have the prerogative of mercy, that you want to forgive somebody for some reason, at least that would have happened when justice was already done. But don't start acting the way that they are acting now before anybody had been given a chance to explain themselves what they may or may not have done during Jammeh's rule.
Do you think forgiveness can substitute justice?
I believe that there cannot be justice. You cannot substitute justice with forgiveness. You cannot. I believe that people must first pay for the actions, for their crimes. Whatever payment that is going to be will be determined by a court of law. But if you are convicted of a crime, then at least some part of justice might have happened. But you cannot also, Omar, forgive somebody who had not already been tried. Give them a chance to go through the process. So when they are exonerated, let them go their way. When they are convicted, then we can talk about forgiveness.
Yesterday, another story on the Standard newspaper was Imam Fati. He said, J.J. Rollins did horrible things in Ghana, worse things in Ghana, but he's still in exile. He's still living in Ghana. And trying to put things into context, he said, Jammeh should not live in exile. What do you make of Imam Fati's statement yesterday?
Imam Fati, I think, has become one of the saddest people in that country. And I have made this conclusion that if I were to die in the Gambia, and the only imams that were available to take care of my body were the Imam Fatis and the Imam Kas, please throw me in the ocean and let the fish eat me rather than if I have these people bury me. This man has no shame. First of all, I do not expect anything different from Imam Fati because he is the same guy who, with his cohorts, were justifying Jammeh's illegal execution of prisoners. We all know that. So Imam Fati, to me, would never surprise me because the only way that Imam Fati would have surprised me is if Imam Fati came and said that he was denouncing Jammeh's crimes and he was coming to ask for redemption from Gambians because of his support of Jammeh's atrocities. Imam Fati has been consistently an enabler of Jammeh's atrocities. So nothing he says surprises me because to me, as far as I'm concerned, he has absolutely zero credibility.
You also mentioned the December 30th attackers as contributing towards bringing down the dictatorship, but some will argue that they could not make it and it was Gambians who went to the polls and eventually booted out Jammeh.
Well, one can argue that. But let's look at what gave led to December 30th. It was Kennedy who said that those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
Right.
Gambians had gone through hell and back. We've done everything possible to make Yahya Jammeh to understand that we as a people deserve better treatment than we could ever get. He rebuffed us. Our people had gone through elections with Yahya Jammeh. The diasporans had worked towards establishing coalitions in the Gambia to challenge the dictatorship. Yahya rebuffed them. And it came to an extent where citizens of the Gambia who had nothing to lose by staying away from our politics and everything to lose by putting their lives on the line, decided that enough is enough. We have to go and at least try to remove this guy. They went there. They could have engaged in a gunfight and tried to kill people. But they did not. They got killed. But let's look at the people that are saying that, without Jammeh was removed through elections. Yes, of course, people voted him out. But it took the guns of ECOMIG, their jet fighters, to drive Jammeh away. Because we all know that when Jammeh said he was rejecting the results on the 9th, he meant it. The only thing that forced him out was the threat of him being killed by ECOMIG, because if they were to come in. So if you look at it at the end of the day, everything came in play. Elections came in play. Fundraising came in play. Guns came in play. Every possible thing that you can think of came about. And the Gambian people rising up finally, organizing themselves, uniting against somebody. Everything that we always work towards to ensure that Jammeh went out came into play. Because I can guarantee you that if there was no threat of ECOMIG coming in there or another country coming in there to force him out, we would have had a similar situation that we've seen in Togo and other places, where they could have rejected the results and sat on and nothing would come out of it. We've seen it in Ivory Coast. Yeah. When it happened, it had to take the intervention of France for Laurent Gbagbo to be arrested and whisked away. So the same fate faced the Gambia until ECOMIG and ECOWAS, the United Nations and the AU, all came together and said, you know what, the only practical solution here to this problem is through military means, and this was why Jammeh was out. That is not to diminish the role of elections, because, of course, it is the key factor. But without also ECOMIG's intervention, Jammeh would have still been in power.
Finally, Coach Pasamba Jao.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, finally. What will be your final message?
Well, I just want to, say this to the government that, listen, the Gambia belongs to all of us. We all have a role to play in it. We all have a lot at stake in that country. I believe every Gambian really wants the Gambia to be the most developed place in the world. Every Gambian, I believe, outside of Yahya Jammeh and some of his cronies, want to see a peaceful, everlasting peaceful Gambia. So the government must also understand that their critics are not people who hate the Gambia, but people who love the Gambia and maybe have a different view. Some people can be cynical enough to believe that, well, they don't love the country. But what I just want to say, finally, Omar, yeah. I am reading Barrow's 22-page lecture that he gave in Nigeria. And I just want President Barrow to understand that I believe it was a very well-written document. Mm-hmm. And most of the advices that he gave are very, very great advices. So what I want to urge him and his government is, don't just think that this speech was just for the graduates. But I think Barrow should own this speech and read it from time to time and ask himself whether he is living by those same ideals. And I believe if he is guided by some of the utterances that he made in that speech, he would become a very, very successful president. With that, Omar, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Coach Pasamba Jao, for your time.
Thank you.
That is Coach Pasamba Jao discussing the interview we had with the Standard newspaper, Hot FM, and it was printed on the Standard newspaper yesterday.